got 5 o'clock, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Vallecitos Water District for Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022 at 5 p.m. And this meeting is via teleconference. I'm going to read a portion of notice to the public. Members of the public attending the meeting via the Zoom video conferencing platform can express their desire to offer public comment or provide input on an agenda item at the appropriate time by utilizing the raise hand function. Persons who have dialed into the meeting and would like to make a comment can enter *9 on their phone and will be identified by their phone number when it is their turn to speak. Additional instructions for online participation will be posted on the district's website, www.vwd.org/meetings. Now we come to Pledge of Allegiance, and could I have Director Hernandez lead us in the pledge?
Thank you. I certainly will. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Next is roll call attendance. Director Pennick.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Here.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Sinella.
Here.
And I'm here as well. We have all 5 in attendance this evening. Okay, next is additions to the agenda. I don't believe we have any additions, so we'll move on to adoption of the agenda for this meeting. And we have a proposed modification to the agenda, and I'll turn it over to General Manager Perum. I think you're muted.
Yeah, I was. Sorry about that. Thank you, President Ellithorpe. Before I talk about that item, I do want to introduce Tori Hester, an associate with Best and Krieger, and she'll be serving as legal counsel at our meeting tonight. So thank you for coming, Tori.
Thank you for having me.
So regarding the item that President Ellithorpe mentioned, based on legal advice from our legal counsel, we are recommending that consent calendar agenda item 1.8 be removed from the consent calendar and placed on the action calendar. And this is per some provisions of Senate Bill number 1436. And to do so, we would need a motion, a second, and a vote to adopt the agenda with the recommended changes. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, President Ellithorpe.
Okay, and I propose that we make that the first item on the action items before 2.1. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as with the modification noted.
Move to approve Hernandez with the modification.
Second, Sinella.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as modified. Roll call vote. Director Pennick.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Sinella.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. The item passes unanimously. We're at public comment portion. Do we have any public comment?
So President Ellithorpe, we did not receive any written comments, but I do notice that Gail Martin does have her hand raised in the audience.
Okay.
So if you'd like me to call on her.
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Martin.
Yes, good evening. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad to see all of you and that you're doing well. I have 4 items, please. Number 1, what are the costs of the construction contracts on this agenda, please? They're not noticed. I would like to know what the costs are, and in the future, if possible, I would like, as usual, for these costs for the construction contracts to be noted on the agenda. Number 2, for the district process of redistricting, I understand that we have tentative dates for public hearings in February and March. I would like to know when in February will the maps be circulated to the public and how are you going to do that? Number 3, congratulations on the 3 awards. And number 4, bravo for the scholarship program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Could we have staff get back to Ms. Martin to answer those questions?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. I'll reach out to her.
Okay,
Yeah, I think one of the items that you brought up was the construction contract, and I believe there is information in the staff reports on those. So, but I'll follow up with her.
okay, thank you. Okay, next is the presentation. The district received 3 President's Special Recognition Awards from the Association of California Water Agencies Joint Powers Insurance Authority.
Yeah, and I'm going to have Chris Robbins present those awards tonight. So go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, General Manager Puem. Again, everybody, I put on a share screen. I'm hoping everybody can see it okay.
We can.
So this is one of 3 awards the district received from the Aqua JPIA, a President's Special Recognition Award. This was for low ratio of paid claims and case reserve to deposit premiums. One of the awards. The next one is a property program, same type of thing with paid claims and case reserves to deposit premiums. And then the last one is for workers' comp. Same thing, paid claims and case reserve to deposit premiums. So we all had a loss ratio on all 3 of these. This one's for liability of 20% or less over the last 3 years. And I did a little follow-up with Aqua JPIA to get a little more information. And it appears that Aqua's JPIA took some action, and they will be reaching out to the board, Vallecitos, general manager, and we should be receiving a refund check in the amount of approximately $127,000 from Aqua JPIA. So good news on these awards.
Great news. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, and President Elletharp, I would add, obviously, this is all a result of the hard work and diligence of our staff. We really pay attention to loss prevention and making sure we're working safely and smartly out there. And just for a little bit of history, in recent years, when we've received large checks, refund from the insurance, the board has shared portions of insurance refunds with staff. So I would just offer, if the board would like to consider doing so again, I can place an item on a future agenda to allow the board the opportunity to discuss, but that's at the board's discretion. But we just can't discuss it tonight, but just let me know if you'd like me to add it to a future agenda.
Okay, great. I'd like to ask you now to do that and add it to a future agenda.
I will.
I see Director Snell's hand raised.
Yeah, Glenn was reading my mind when we were watching the presentation. Kudos to everybody involved and our staff especially. And I just was, if Glenn wasn't going to bring it up, I was going to mention that in years past, I think at least on 2 separate occasions, we've done something special for the staff. I think it was in the form of a bonus or something to return at least either all or at least some of that money to them, because they're the ones who actually helped us achieve getting that extra money. So I highly recommend that we do that again.
Yeah, and we'll bring
Thank you.
when I agendize the item, we'll put together a staff report, and it'll talk about the history of how the board has managed this in the past. So, and I'll get on in the next agenda.
I think there's another hand up in that from one of my board colleagues.
Yeah, Director Boyd Hodgson has her hand raised. President Elletharp.
So
I'm
I
sorry,
just
I
wanted to
couldn't-
echo the congratulations. I think we've done this even as recently as as when Director Pinnock and I have been on the board.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a great show of gratitude to return some of the savings to the staff as a way of gratitude. So congratulations, everyone being safe, working very hard, and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? I look forward to considering that item in a future agenda then. Okay, moving on to consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or member of the public requests that a particular item or items be removed from the consent calendar, in which case will be considered separately under action items.
Move to approve. Sanella?
Second. Hernandez, second.
And President
Been moved
Eleftheriou,
and-
just a reminder, this is absent item 1.8. So it's the
Yes,
consent
yeah, it's been
calendar.
moved and seconded to approve the consent calendar with the prior approved modification to remove 1.8 to action items. So we'll do a roll call vote. Director Sanella,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
Director Pennick,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. It passes unanimously. Okay, moving on to action items. Now's the time we'll consider the consent item 1.8, which was moved to action items.
All right, I'll take that one, President Eleftheriou. So the item moved from the consent calendar to the action calendar is titled New Benefits for Employees in Management Positions. So in order to remain competitive when recruiting new talent and retaining existing talent, staff is proposing the district offer some enhanced benefits for managers. So our managers here at Vallecitos are not part of the Employees Association and are therefore unrepresented during labor negotiations. The board could consider similar benefits for our represented employees, and the time to do that would be during MOU negotiations, which will start next year. So there are 3 benefits being proposed tonight and 1 change to our leave policy for the board's consideration tonight. So I'll go over the 3 benefits and then I'll talk about the leave change. So the first one, the first benefit would pertain to new hires. And this is new hires with prior public service experience. And the proposal would be that they could be provided with an initial vacation leave bank of up to 80 hours. So we're finding it's hard to recruit experienced managers and expect them to start the job with no vacation leave on the books. So for example, oftentimes people plan vacations well in advance. They may have a 3-week vacation planned. They switch jobs. They have no leave on the books. They won't accrue enough by the time the vacation comes. So they have to take leave without pay. And we find that that's a disincentive for people to switch from one agency to another. So this would be a one-time benefit, and it would not impact their annual vacation accrual rate. The benefit would be granted at the discretion of the general manager based on the circumstances of the candidate being considered, excuse me, and it would be up to, I believe, 80 hours. So that's the first benefit. The second benefit would also pertain to new hires and would be to provide a signing bonus. So again, this would be at the discretion of the general manager based on the current labor market conditions and the competition in the market, and if deemed necessary to finalize negotiations with the successful candidate. The maximum amount that would be offered would be $10,000. And again, this is a one-time signing bonus, and it would not affect any retirement benefit calculations. So the third benefit being proposed would pertain not just to new hires, but to all managers. And again, when I say new hires, new manager hires, but this one would pertain to all managers, including our existing managers, but it would not pertain to the general manager. So I just want to be clear, this does not pertain to me. I have my own employment contract, so this does not pertain to me. So our managers are what we consider exempt employees, and they are not eligible to receive overtime pay or compensatory time off. And managers often work really long hours. They work over the weekends, stay late for board meetings like this. And we sometimes even call upon them on their vacations. So many agencies do provide executive or what's called management leave to recognize the extraordinary demands of the job. We do not right now. So the only one who gets any kind of executive leave is myself per the terms of my contract. So the third recommendation, benefit recommendation, is to authorize the general manager to provide each manager with between 40 and 80 hours of management leave per year, depending on the demands of their particular job. So it wouldn't be that all managers are equal, but some managers do have more demands placed on their time. They attend more of the evening meetings. They get called out more often on weekends and after hours. Management leave would need to be used in the calendar year it is earned. It can't be carried over to a following year, and it cannot be cashed out. So it has no cash value to the employee or cash burden to the organization. And again, this benefit also would not impact retirement benefits. So those are the three benefits that we're recommending that the board adopt. And the final item is a change to our district's leave policy as it pertains to managers. So this is a bit odd, I found when I first joined Vallecitos. So currently, if a manager reports to work for any length of time and leaves, they are not required to take any time off for that day. So for example, if a manager came to work, stayed for an hour and then went home sick, they would be paid for the whole day. It wouldn't have to use any sick leave. So I'm making a recommendation that we do change the policy to require managers to use accrued leave, so either sick or vacation time, for partial day absences in excess of four hours. So the example I gave before, if somebody came in for an hour, went home sick, they'd have to take at least a half a day of sick leave in that case. So anything in excess of 4 hours. So the only benefit of the three I mentioned with any cash value is the signing bonus for any new employees. We don't have a significant turnover in management staff. And quite frankly, we only have 4 managers. We have the assistant general manager, and we have the general manager. So excluding the general manager, because I have a contract, there's only 5 managers. We don't have a lot of turnover. So I don't see the annual costs exceeding 10,000 in any given year. In most years, it'll be 0 because we won't have any turnover. And the only item that would pertain to the general manager is the change to the leave policy. I would be governed by the same leave policy. If I went home sick early, I would be required to use some of my sick leave, similar with vacation. So this item does require the adoption of the attached resolution to change our policies, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, I see a couple of hands raised. First, Director Hernandez.
Yes, the 80 hours, I mean, that's only 2 weeks. If a new employee came from another district and already had 3 weeks occurred, I mean, is that 2 weeks in addition to the 3, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, so maybe I should have been clear on that. So all we're talking about is an initial grant of vacation. So you'd start with 2 weeks on the books. So let's say a new employee came in, he or she would be credited with 2 weeks of vacation on the books, and then they would start accruing additional vacation every pay period. So, and their accrual rate would depend on prior service experience. Normally, employees start accruing 80 hours per year, but they don't get it all at the beginning, right? They would get 80 divided by 26 pay periods, and every 2 weeks, every pay period, they would get, 6 hours or so, or 4 hours in their pay. So this would not change what we call their annual accrual. This would just give them a bump right at the beginning. Now, they wouldn't get this bump every year. This is a one-time, when you first are hired, you get an allotment of 80 hours to help you take some vacation in the coming year, because you would not have had enough time to accrue significant vacation time. Now, the board did authorize the general manager to grant new hires a higher vacation accrual rate. This was done previously, not at tonight's request, but so we now allow new hires to accrue up to 120 hours per year if their current public service job lets them accrue up to 120 hours. So what we're trying to do is not take employees backwards, because it's a huge barrier to people to go from one agency to another and not have any vacation on the books, not accrue vacation at a slower rate than they received before. And what we're finding is time is becoming more and more valuable to people. It's becoming as important as money. So this is really just a recognition that time is important, and to try to break down those barriers that people may have to switching from one organization to another. And quite frankly, when we're recruiting managers, these are people that are at the highest level, right? They've been in the industry for a long time. They may be accruing 4 to 5 weeks of vacation. They may have 6 or 7 weeks on the books already. It's hard to pull them over to work for Vallecitos. So we're trying to get closer where we can, like I said, break down those barriers. So I hope that answers your question, Director Hernandez.
Well, it does, but I just did the math. So if somebody has 3 weeks of pay in their present job and they move over to our organization, they would have to go through 15 pay periods to get to that 3rd week. If I did my math right. And so your pay periods are every 2 weeks or
Every 2 weeks. Yeah, no, it's every 2 weeks we get paid, and that's when you get your allotment, which is your annual allotment divided by 26.
Yeah, right.
For each
I
pay
mean,
period.
that's half a year. So if you had a vacation scheduled within the first half a year, you'd be SOL.
That's exactly right. And that's the trouble we're having in the job market is people are saying, I'm not even going to consider that job. Or worse yet, they go through the whole process and they pull out right at the end after we've selected a candidate because we don't have a mechanism in place to try to, I'll say, close the gap. Even with the recommendation in front of the board tonight, we're not going to be able to match what other people have at their current jobs, but we'll be closer. So.
Well, why don't we move that up to, I mean, I don't know what the process is based on the number of years before you get, how many years do you have to be in management service to get to 3 weeks?
I don't remember exactly. Rhonda's online. She may know, but over time, the longer you stay at Vallecitos, the more vacation hours you accrue per year. I think it's like after 5 years or 3 years, you start accruing at a higher rate, but it takes many years before you get the maximum accrual rate.
And what's our
maximum accrual rate is, I want to say like 176 hours per year.
Okay.
So it's more than double what you start with, but it takes 10 plus years to get there too.
Yeah. So if we had a candidate who showed up and said, hey, I got 3 weeks and you're going to give me 2, I mean, do we have a waiver opportunity? Do we have a opportunity to come back and say, hey, we want this candidate, he wants an extra week. Can we grant that? Or what do we got to do then?
Yeah, in that situation, Director Hernandez, I would say I would be coming back in front of the board. I would say, hey, we've got an opening, we've got a candidate. We can't close the deal because of this gap in vacation. And I recommend that we deviate from even maybe the higher policy that we've established. I would take that on a one-off basis. The other option is the board could give me the authority to grant up to 120 or 160 hours if the conditions warrant. And you'd have to trust that I would be judicious with the bestowment of vacation hours. And I would only do it if the person's kind of has that many hours already or accrues that many hours at their current place. And we need it to land the candidate.
Very good. Thank you.
But I think what I'm proposing, the up to 2 weeks is reasonable. And knowing that not only do they start with 2 weeks, but they start accruing additional hours on day one. You know, if they have a vacation the second week they're here, then we have some other issues. But if they're going to work for 4 months or so, they'll probably be up to 3 weeks or so vacation, that's a long vacation to take if you're a new hire anyway.
Agree.
Okay, you know what? I see Rhonda's hand raised, so maybe she wanted to respond to this particular comment.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yep.
we can.
I was just checking the handbook, and for the annual accrual hours, you don't hit 120 hours to fiscal year 5. Unfortunately, our rules are fiscal year, not annual year. So yes, it could be quite a while before someone gets up to 3 weeks of vacation leave.
Yeah, so you'd be stuck at 80-hour per year accrual rate for the first 5 years. And then in year 5, then you'd start accruing at the rate of 120 hours per year. And then Rhonda, I don't know when the next jump is, how many years of service, if you have it open.
The next jump isn't until fiscal year 11. And that's when you go up to 160 hours of an annual accrual. So it really just depends how much leave they're using every year and how much they save, but the accrual rate won't go up to the highest we have is 176 hours, and that's at fiscal year 16. So that's a ways out.
But these issues are being brought up by candidates for the jobs because they're saying, hey, I'm already working at a place where I'm getting 5 weeks of vacation a year. I can't see going to a place that offers me 2 or maybe 3. So,
Okay, let's go to Director Sinawa.
Thank you, President Alatar. In general, I'm supportive of this. We're seeing it in the private sector as well, that in order to attract top talent, you've got to be more competitive today more than ever before. I just wanted to get a couple points of clarification. I'm comfortable with the 80 hours and leaving it for the vacation time and leaving that as one of the tools in the GM's toolbox. For the bonus, is it up to 10,000 or is it 10,000?
it's up to 10,000 at the discretion of the GM.
Okay, that's good. I like that. I'm comfortable with that. And then tell me more about the executive leave. Would current management employees qualify for that?
Yes, they would. So that's of the 3 benefits we're proposing. That's the one that would pertain to current managers as well. So and again, general managers discretion on that. I would look at the 5 managers that are under me and figure out who's putting in a lot of extra time, and somewhere between 40 and 80 hours, they would be granted that. So that's not you don't have to spend time to accrue it. It's instantly given to you for that fiscal year. If you're a long-term employee on January 1, you get this bank of X number of hours. That's how it would work. And then you have to use it by the end of the year. If you don't use it all by the end of the year, it just goes away. And then January 1 of the following year, you get another allotment.
Yeah, so of the 3 aspects, Glenn, that you've presented to us, that it's this last piece that I'm not as comfortable with, and I think my concern is, I think you're going to find, unless you have a very well-defined policy of how you're going to make the decisions to issue this. I think once you start giving it to one employee, you're going to have all of your management staff. How are you going to tell one employee yes and the other employee no, right? And you're really going to have some firm language around that, and what qualifies somebody to earn that added benefit. And that's also, if I'm hearing you correctly, that's more around retention than recruiting. And I don't think we have a retention issue. So while I'm kind of more leaning towards, because I do recognize the importance of having that work-life balance and how important that is with employees today. I just think I think we're kind of going down a slippery slope unless we put a lot of parameters and well-documented policies around that. I'd be more inclined to maybe having almost as a performance-based reward for an employee to have give them a paid day off or a couple days off. But I don't know, when you start talking about 80 hours, that's 2 full weeks in addition to potentially, I would imagine the majority of our management staff are at least a 3-week level already. They're out of the office a lot, and I just think you're gonna, it's going to be very difficult to explain to one employee that they got it and another employee that they didn't get it, because how do you measure who's been working hard? So
Yeah. President Elatharp, if I may respond, I guess
Sure.
a few things. So first of all, I only have 5 managers, right? So it's not like I'm looking at 105 people and trying to figure out where. There's a pretty clear distinction amongst the managers of who's putting in a ton of overtime and extra time and who's not. So I don't think I'd have too much trouble with that. I don't think it's just for retention. And you're right, we don't have a problem with retention, but I think it's for 3 areas. It's retention, it's recruitment, because new hires are also looking at that. They're saying, oh, that place also offers executive leave. And so they think, hey, I can add that onto vacation. That may get me closer to the vacation I have where I'm currently at. And it's kind of industry standard. It is a recognition, and I think it's just treating people right. We expect a lot out of our managers, and they put in a lot of hours. So I think it's just a recognition of that. But whatever the board wants to do on that, I'm comfortable as the general manager being able to differentiate and figure out how much gets granted to each of the 5 managers. In the other ones, I think it will help with attracting new talent as well.
Just one more follow-up question, then I'll listen to what my colleagues have to ask or say. If you had to guesstimate today, Glenn, how many of your current 5 managers that would qualify if we pass this tonight this year, how many of the 5 would you say would probably get some of this executive leave time?
Well, I think I would give all of them some, and I'd rather not get into details. They're all listening. So,
No, I understand.
But yeah, I think that would be between me and each of them individually. But I think the board, when they make a decision, they should assume that they may all get 80 hours, right? You have to look at the high end. If you're not comfortable with the high end, then you shouldn't give me that authority. If you are trusting my judgment, and I would use it judiciously, then I would suggest that we go between 40 and 80 hours to each of the managers.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Director Penick.
Thank you. So my understanding was this was for new hires, not for current managers, right?
Well, so 2 of the 3 benefits were for new hires. There was the
Okay.
initial grant of vacation and the signing bonus. This one that we're talking about now would pertain to all managers, new and existing.
Okay, so that's that one. Okay. Yeah, this one's tough for me because I'm old school. We've got a great place to work. In order for me to see this, I would like to see current benefits. I mean, you've got good pay, you've got all health insurance benefits paid for. We've got good, I mean, it seems like it's a great place to work. And it's interesting how we're having a hard time hiring good people. And people should be knocking on our door to be, hey, can I work for you? And I guess it's a different world out there. How does this, my only question that I had is when you're talking about new hires and the other 2, the new hire, the 2-week automatically and the signing bonus up to 10K, how does that work with promoting within? You've got a current employee and you want to promote them to a manager. Is there a signing bonus and an automatic, how does that work?
No, it would be specifically, as proposed, it would be specifically for people coming from an outside, either another agency or the private sector, to try to entice them to join either a new agency or join a public agency for the first time. Again, just to break down that barrier. There's a lot of hesitance by people to make that step, that switching employers. So small things like signing bonuses could help. Sometimes it's a relocation issue. We don't have any relocation assistance. So if somebody's coming from Northern California or another state, they could use the signing bonus for relocation expenses. It's up to them how they use the money, but and so that same kind of thought process wouldn't apply to a current employee. They don't have that same barrier.
Okay, so, okay. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting as we discuss this, but I don't know. It seems like a great place to work. And I don't want to, as far as our ratepayers, that seems, like you said, the cost, it's not going to be a huge cost to the district. And if it's going to, help employees stay happy, it's great. It's a win-win. But it just seems like, I don't know. I've talked to me. I've got a lot of friends that would love to work at a place like Vallecitos for what we currently have with good benefits and good pay. And, but I trust your judgment on that. You've been in the industry a long time. I have not. So if that's what needs to happen, I trust you on that one.
Well, thank you. And I will say this, we don't want just anybody. We're not desperate to get people to come here. We want the best people, right? So when it's a competitive environment, I want to make sure that I can attract that person that may not otherwise come. That's why.
Yeah, but I trust that you can make an average person great. So we just need to get a good person. You can make a good person better.
I appreciate the confidence.
All right, thanks. Let's go to Director Boyd Hodgson.
You're on mute.
Thank you. I lowered my hand and I meant to unmute myself. I'd like to echo Director Stella's concern about what I heard was sort of the standardization of the application of this. And I'm going to approach it from a little bit of a different perspective because you have 5 managers that do very different jobs. And some of those jobs may be more conducive to working overtime, but everybody values the prize, right? Everybody values the time off. So what I would like to see is some kind of standardization in the implementation so that you can make sure that it's not rigged, so that, not rigged, but it's so that it's not the same folks that are always getting it in the same positions. Whereas the other person's job may just not require that much overtime, but maybe they're working hard too. So I would like to see some kind of mechanism in place. I don't know what that looks like. I haven't thought it through. This is, something that I'm just bringing to your attention, but I think it's an equity issue. And you've got people doing different jobs. Some of them may require different time away. Some of them may require being on call. Some of them may not, but the prize is valuable to everybody. So I would just like for there to be some consideration in that standardization.
Yeah, and I guess I thank you. And I would add that the granting of management leave is primarily to recognize the additional time that they're spending on the job. It's not to say, are you working hard or not? It's to say, hey, you spend a lot of weekends, you go to a lot of night meetings, you go travel, you go to conferences a lot, you're spending a lot of time, additional hours. That's what it's intended to do, not to say you're a better employee or you work harder. It's mostly to say you're working more hours. So that's what I would use as my guide. So, which of the managers are always on these meetings, which ones get called on the weekends for certain things. That's what I would use as my guide. I love all my managers. I think they're all fantastic, but they do have different levels of time commitments.
Yeah, I think you're kind of using it as compensatory time off if you were talking about non-exempt employees.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. They are exempt employees and they can't get compensatory time. They can't get overtime. So this is a way to recognize those additional hours that are non-exempt employees or regular employees. They get compensated differently. They'll get time and a half when they work overtime. They'll get compensatory time if they have to stay late. So this is just a way to kind of, I'll say, level the playing field to help the managers.
Let's go to Director Hernandez again.
I just did a quick calculation just for the extra hours for our board meetings that we have twice a month. I mean, that's 48 hours. So, I agree with Director Sinella that maybe 80 is too much, but if we made that 40, I would wholeheartedly support this motion.
Thank you. Director Sinella.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting conversation. The last piece of this, yeah, I feel a bit that if you've chosen to be in a career with a public agency, a city, in public government, and especially in management, you're going to be attending a council meeting, a board meeting of some sort. I mean, that kind of comes with the territory. And I wanted to ask Glenn, exempt employees have a lot of flexibility within their schedules because they're exempt. And if they do stay late for a board meeting, or if work requires them to put in a 12-hour day, but that one day when they need to pick up their kid from school early because they're ill, they don't lose pay for doing that like a non-exempt employee would, right? And so there's already some correction built into the way that they have flexibility in their and not having to do a time card, for example, or like an hour by hour time card. And so having said all that, Director Hernandez convinced me to a compromise. I'll make a motion. I'll move to approve staff's recommendation with the latter executive time off piece of it being capped at 40 hours per employee, potentially at your discretion. And I put the added caveat that Glenn, you come back in 60 days with a standard policy format. I don't know if this is a policy. I don't know if it's just some sort of work process, but I want to hear more about how you're going to implement this. And I want it to be documented so all of the employees are aware of it and it's transparent.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the resolution with the modification of 40 hours maximum management leave instead of 80. Any further discussion?
And this is all at the discretion of the general manager, right? As far as the bonuses and things like that. Is that what I'm understood? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
That's right.
understanding there's no other changes.
And President Elitharp, maybe check in with legal counsel. So Tori, the board can approve it with that modification, right?
Yes, as long as the motion states that it's the amended program and you adopt it that way, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, we have a motion and a second.
Oh,
We'll do
I'm
a
sorry.
roll.
I'm sorry, point of information, or I'm not exactly sure. Can we split this motion? Can we vote on the first two and then have Glenn come back for the third benefit? Can we amend it that way? Can we vote on the first two proposed parts of the resolution and then come back for the third one in a more
If
fleshed
I may
out?
add, it would be helpful to resolve the issues today. We do have reasons. There's some time sensitivity.
Yeah, and we already have a motion and second on the floor, so I think we would have to act.
Call for the question.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Director Pennick,
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson,
Yes.
Director Sinala,
Yes.
Director Hernandez,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. It passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 2.1.
Okay, President.
Scholarship contest recommendation.
Yeah, so President Elitharp, I'll kick that off and I'll turn it over quickly. But our policy committee has met several times to discuss a proposed scholarship program. I think it was initially brought up by Director Hernandez, who had heard of something at a conference he went to, and the policy committee has carried the ball on that. And Chris, why don't you bring the board up to speed on where we're at?
Thank you so much, and glad to have Council Victoria Hester here. She's the one that helped me with some of the research for the scholarship contest recommendation. So as General Manager Proem noted, the Public Awareness Personnel Policy, or P3 committee, has been reviewing the subject of providing scholarships to local students. The committee recommends that the district offer flat $1,000 scholarships to one student at Palomar College, one student at Cal State San Marcos, and then a senior at each of the high schools, being Mission Hills High, San Marcos High, Foothills, Twin Oaks High School, and then High Tech High North County. A total of six scholarships would be offered annually, requiring an annual budget of $6,000, and payment would be made directly to the student. The selection process would require the students to submit an application. They'd have to submit an essay, a letter of recommendation, and a financial needs worksheet. And then the P3 committee itself would serve as the judges and be responsible for reviewing and recommending the scholarship recipients to the board of directors each year. Once we have board approval for this, I'll work on developing an outreach effort to distribute packages to college and high school counselors. We'll have promotional materials on the website. We'll try and push it into the monthly bulletins at the schools if they're available. We'll have a press release. We'll announce the program on our website and on social media, and push it out that way. I mentioned Victoria, Council Victoria, working with me on this. She notes that the district can fund the scholarships provided that the district makes findings on the record that demonstrate the funding of the scholarships furthers the district's purposes by prominently displaying the district and its place in the community as an agency providing water, wastewater, recycled water services, fostering students' interest in engineering, water resources, and other fields related to the district's functions, and making students aware of career, possibilities in the water industry. And then funding for the scholarships would need to come from lease or cell tower revenue. The fiscal impact for the scholarships, direct cost would be $6,000 annually, and recommend that the board approve implementation of a scholarship program. And I'm here to take questions, and that's my presentation.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I see Director Hernandez hand up.
Well, I appreciate the policy committee picking up the ball on this. It's something I've been very interested in along the way. I did have a question. In your application, I'm hoping we're looking for individuals that are seeking, as you mentioned, a water, wastewater, engineering emphasis, if you will. Is that part of the application process?
Yes, and I believe it would be up to the committee to actually review the applications and make decisions on, who's going to get the actual scholarship.
Okay, and then I trust the committee would be not interested in looking at someone who wants a scholarship. I mean, deserving as they may be, but wants to go into the dental field or the medical field. I'm looking for help on our side with this opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. I want to just extend an appreciation to the work that Director Pennock put into the logistics for this scholarship. It was fun to talk about this and hash it out. I'm surprised, though, this is the first time that we've seen that the funding for the scholarships has to come from the lease or cell tower revenue that I can recall. So I'd like a little bit of clarity around that. I don't recall us deciding that that's where the funding was going to come from. So I'd like a little bit of explanation and background on that. Thank you.
And Tori, I don't know if you want to handle that or if you want me to take a shot, but feel free.
I can chime in there. The legal requirements, it requires that we use unrestricted revenue. So we can't use rate revenue here for this because that needs to, district can't charge more than the cost to provide those services. So that's where we said unrestricted revenue. And so the examples we suggested were property taxes, lease revenue, that sort of thing. So as long as it's an unrestricted revenue source, it can be used for this. And then, so my understanding was that then the two sources proposed were the lease or cell tower revenue. Does that help? So it just can't be rate revenue.
It does. Thank you. I wonder if instead we can modify it to just say funding for the scholarships must come from unrestricted revenue rather than specify that it come from lease or cell tower revenue. Can we make that modification?
From a legal perspective, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that would be fine, Director Boyd Hodgson. What Tori was saying is an important legal distinction, but there's no practical complications with this. We have a lot of non-rate revenue, millions of dollars, so the $6,000 is not going to cause any problem. There won't be fund limited, but yeah, we can certainly do what you're suggesting.
Okay, let's move to Director Sinala.
You're on mute.
You're muted, Mike.
No.
Thank you. You'd think after 2 years of Zooming, we'd have that down by now. Similar question to what I was asking about on the prior item. Is the policy committee going to take the lead on developing the parameters, the rules, if you will, with regards to the scholarship program? Do we need a policy on this? What's kind of, tell me a little bit more about the next steps and the logistics of all this, because I'll preface all this with I'm 100% on board. I think it's a great idea, and I thank everybody who's put this together, but I don't want to put us in a position as a district to where we're ever questioned, because we're going to have 6 winners every year, but that means we're going to have X amount of people who didn't win, right? And so I want to make sure that we're protected in that way, and that a good thing doesn't turn into a negative thing.
One of the things that I think is probably, valuable for us to talk about is this is kind of an initial effort, and no one can really predict how exactly the scholarship program will go. It's similar to what other agencies have put out, the same dollar amount, same number amount, kind of the sister agencies, Vista Irrigation District and so forth. So there may be, the board can come back at a future date and say, well, we want to expand this or contract this, depending on sort of the results that we see after the, the first year of doing this.
Yeah,
I'm
that
not,
might be-
you know, I don't think we will get so many that it's has a negative connotation to it.
I appreciate that, Chris, but is there going to be like a standardized application? Everybody is filling out the same form, answering the same questions. And then the other piece of it is I had heard that in your presentation that the P3 committee will kind of vet the applicants. But are they going to be the final say, or are they just going to make a recommendation to the entire board?
What I had recommended in this report was that the P3 committee would be the entity that looks and screens the candidates, but brings them to the board of directors for review and approval. And
Okay.
Yes, there would be a same application for all the students.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just think
would
we need to put, we have a bit of a history at the district of not always having the best procedures and policies, right? And that's an exercise that we're going through currently as one of our goals for this year, is to kind of, enhance that area. And as we implement these new programs, this is now our second new program of the night, between the last item and this item. I just want to make sure as we go forward, these new programs are captured and documented in a standard way and appropriately, because we're not all going to be here, right? And so 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, we need to make sure that the legacy of these programs carry on, and but they're implemented with fairness and transparency. And I just want to make sure we capture all that.
Yeah, and I think Director Sinella, I think it's one of those things that time will be our guide and experience, and I think we'll refine the program as it moves on. We may get an overwhelming show of interest, or we may get 2 people. We don't know. And my recollection of the conversations at the policy committee is they weren't leaning towards a really rigorous points-based system. It was going to be a little bit subjective. People will submit an application, and then they'll be evaluated on their own merits and a subjective determination. So we're not, like I said, we're not at a points-based system yet. Maybe over time and experience we get there, because it's so competitive and we really need to differentiate out the candidates. And maybe we should probably hear from the 2 policy committee members, that they can maybe clarify their intent and how they will make those recommendations.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's all right. Thank you. And Director Boyd Hodgson, she made a reference to me, but she's the one that's been running with this ball. She's been great on that. It just, and it started with Jim. Like it's been said, this is a first year program. We're not sure where it's going to go, if you're going to have thousands of applicants and essays to look through, or if you're going to have 3 or 4. So it's hard to put down exactly how it's going to work. But our vision on how we thought it would work is, yes, we would have a few applicants. They would come in, they would make a presentation. We'd have a good chat with them, see where they're at, and have to decide, who is more deserving based on, yes, like what Jim said, if they want to be involved in the water and wastewater industry, a financial needs analysis. So, if we've got somebody coming in saying, yeah, depending on where they're at, that would be pretty rigorous. They would have to fill out quite a bit of essays, make a presentation, talk in public to board members, which could be, hard for a lot of kids. And then, we just make a determination who is more deserving of a scholarship and move forward. And then a lot of it was based on what we agreed on was a return and report. Hey, come back and talk to us. How did you use this $1,000? Did you stay in school, or did you drop out and you're working down at the local joint, or what's going on? So based on those returning reports, it'll allow us to grow year after year to see if maybe we made a mistake on some things, and we'll just kind of tweak it a little bit if need be. But I think first year, just see how it goes and truly just look at the needs and the wants of some of these students coming in. At least that's my perspective and my point of view.
I agree. And one of the key things that we had talked about was the return and report, and that individuals would have to reapply every year, because they get it one year doesn't necessarily mean they get it the next year. But, the goal is that we provide learners who are interested in water, wastewater, or related fields, such as the environment, the opportunity to continue on with their studies. And, I'm perfectly comfortable if we draft the application and bring that before the board and have it approved. I'm comfortable with that if that's something that the rest of the board would like to see. But we have talked about all of these details. They're probably not in the minutes as detailed as we have discussed them, but we have talked about how it is a standard application. They will have to come before the board to interview. I certainly hope we don't have 300 applicants, because that's a lot of essays. And I think I specifically remembered in one of these meetings that I didn't want to have to read 300 essays, but that we would make a determination. It wouldn't necessarily be financial need based, but we do want to see how they propose to spend the money. We want them to think through that. And that was something that Director Pennock brought to the table, saying, let's have them think through it so that they are making it clear how they will spend the money. And I think that was a really good addition. And so we do have parameters in place. If the board would like to see that spec'd out, I think we can probably do that. It's all there. It's just may not be written down in the resolution.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? I think it's a great concept, and it's, having had to try to hire people over the last 30 some years, and it's getting more and more difficult all the time. And I think it's anything we can do to enhance the pool of potential candidates is a great thing. So I'm fully on board with it. Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion. Director Boyd
I'll
Hodgson.
make a motion. And I have something to read with the motion. I was told that I needed to read this, so I'm going to read it. I move that the district implement an annual scholarship program in the amount of $6,000. The proposed scholarships would further the district's public purpose by prominently displaying the district and its place in the community as the agency providing water, wastewater, and recycled water services, fostering students' interest in engineering, water resources, and other fields related to the district's functions, and making students aware of career possibilities in the water industry. Funding for the scholarships must come from unrestricted revenue.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Director Boyd Hodgson and seconded by Director Hernandez. Please, let's vote. Roll call vote. Director Pennock.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
I think your
Director Boyd.
microphone, yeah, it didn't come in.
Yes. You mean you couldn't hear me over my dog barking? Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Oh, yes.
Director Sinella.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. It passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 2.2. Resolution of the Board of Directors in support of City of San Marcos Ordinance 2021-1507, restricting the use of single-use plastic food serviceware.
Yeah, I'll take that, President Elitharp. So in our strategic planning effort, the board did indicate a desire to be better stewards of the environment. And one of the strategies adopted was to reduce the use of single-use plastics. So Chris is going to walk us through this item and tell how we can leverage what another local agency has done to further that objective. So Chris, take it away.
Thank you so much, General Manager Pruim. So the City of San Marcos introduced that ordinance back on October 12th, 2021, and then adopted it on October 26th of 2021. And it's restricts the use of single-use plastics food serviceware. And Vallecitos makes an effort to reduce the uses of products that are harmful to the environment. work out at the treatment plants and so forth, and in the collection system. We're always trying to do a good job of encouraging and promoting long-lasting reusable products as ultimately the most effective approach in reducing any type of pollution and in reducing single plastic pollution. I'm requesting that the board adopt the associated resolution declaring support for City of San Marcos Ordinance 2021-1507. Fiscal impact wise, I talked to staff here at the district, and to replace the single-use plastics we use here for serviceware to more sustainable products would probably cost about an additional $400 annually. And it's my recommendation that you pass the resolution to support the City of San Marcos's ordinance.
Okay, I see Director Sinella's hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. So the night that the city council passed this ordinance on single-use plastics, I spoke in favor of their efforts at the podium there at City Hall. And so I'm definitely in favor of it. I can support tonight's item, but I feel like we're not kind of doing enough. I feel like we've taken our own proactive steps to reduce our use of single use plastics, and you know, as we all know, when we were meeting in person for a few weeks, you know, we didn't have any single use plastics at the dais, and I'm sure that Glenn and the staff have taken other steps in that direction in recent months. I feel like we might be missing an opportunity to lead, be better. Instead of piggybacking on what the city did, why don't we highlight, why don't we do something, at least internally? We may not have the same enforcement capabilities as the city, but we could certainly enforce how we handle our own operations, and then put that out to the public, and it's coming from Vallecitos, not just that we're supporting what the city did or piggybacking on their efforts, but we're actually taking more of a leadership role ourselves. So I don't know if that's more work than staff or the board wants to bite off right now, but that's kind of where my head is on this. You know, I'm okay with supporting the item before us. I just don't feel like it goes far enough, and it doesn't. I think it doesn't put us in a leading position. It puts us in a following position.
Yeah, and President Elitharp, if I may, so in response to what you just said, Director Sinella, I would suggest that the board consider adopting the resolution tonight, the resolution of support. And then as we go through the tactical plan initiative process associated with our strategic plan, we could start layering in additional activities that we would do. Now, I may have told you that we'll be coming to the board probably on March 2nd for the board to adopt our tactical plan initiatives for the remainder of fiscal year 22, which only goes through the end of June. So maybe as we gear up for fiscal year 23, the board can start giving us ideas of what you would like to see us incorporate into the tactical plan for fiscal year 23, and it could include those types of items to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Director Hernandez.
Oh, did we lose him? There he is.
Oh, good. There we are.
Go ahead. Director Hernandez, go ahead.
Yes, as the one that recommended we move at the dais to not be using single-use plastic items, I wholeheartedly support this, and I agree with Director Sinella that we need to further expand this so that we do lead by example, and taking the general manager direction there on the upcoming strategic plans. I think we could go ahead and process it at that time. So I'm wholeheartedly supporting this.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. Looking for a motion to adopt this resolution.
Adopt the resolution.
I'll second that resolution.
Okay, it's been moved by Director Boyd Hodgson to adopt the resolution, seconded by Director Hernandez. Roll call vote. Director Sinella. I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
Director Pennick.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So the item passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to the reports section of our agenda. And start with the general manager's report.
Thank you, President Elitharp. Just two real quick items. So at a recent board meeting, you may recall that we recognized 3 awards we were scheduled to receive from the California Water Environment Association, or CWEA. And those 3 awards were Wastewater Plant of the Year, Wastewater Operator of the Year, and the best use of social media for outreach. So last weekend, the CWEA awards ceremony was held at the Catamaran Resort down in San Diego. We did purchase a table and we had staff go, and we did in fact receive those awards. So Chris has at least one of them. I think staff has the other 2. Operations staff has the other 2. And we're going to be putting them proudly on display at the boardroom, on our website, and on social media. So I wasn't in attendance, but I heard it was a great event, and it's really nice to be recognized by our peers in the industry in which we work. So that was really cool. And the other thing, just a real brief update on COVID. We're still struggling. So we've broken down into kind of work zones basically, and we have 5. So Meadowlark is one, our building B operations is another. We have the engineering downstairs wing and the finance wing, and then upstairs. So those 5 zones, 4 out of the 5 of them have been declared outbreaks over the time. So not all at the same time, but COVID's hasn't released its grip yet, but we're still getting things done, and we're sending people back home to work remotely and then bringing them back in when it's safe to do so. But bear with us. It's been a challenge, and I'm really so impressed by staff and how we're managing this, and particularly our HR team that's having to deal with this on a day in and day out basis. It's really difficult. So that's all I have to share tonight, President Elitharp.
Okay, thank you. District Legal Counsel.
Thank you, President Elitharp. I have no report tonight.
Okay. San Diego County Water Authority, I guess that's me. Let me get my notes. The Water Authority Board had its regular board meeting on January 27th. There was a whole lot of routine items on the agenda. The meeting went all day long. I'll pick out just a few items out of the many that were considered. One, the board authorized general manager to waive the Vallecitos Water District late fee for September 2021 water invoice, and that amounted to a little over $29,000. So maybe the general manager could explain a little bit why we had that late payment fee, just real quick.
I'm sorry, I was responding to an email. Was that directed to me, Director Elitharp?
Yeah, just I noted the waiver of the late payment fee on our water invoice for September, and I just maybe you could just real briefly say what the circumstances were for that.
Yeah, so the Water Authority sends out bills and they have deadlines. In our approval process, because of the large value of the bills, it requires signatures or sign-offs by 2 managers. So as we were preparing that, we didn't have the proper managers because of COVID impacts. People were sent home, didn't have the remote approval capabilities. So Wes finally got me involved, and on the day it was due, I was doing the signature authority, and for some reason at 3:15 in the afternoon it was due, we got on the portal and it said the approval had terminated. So we couldn't complete it that day, so we did it the very next morning, but it was technically a day late, so the Water Authority assessed the penalty. We appealed to them, told us their story, told them our story, and they said, yeah, just go ahead and submit a request for waiver of the late fee. And they've done this for numerous agencies, particularly in the COVID era. I don't like when things like that happen, and it's my, I vowed to never let it happen again. And I've talked with Wes, but fortunately the Water Authority did approve the waiver. And I think it was $29,000 or so, somewhere in that ballpark.
I think everybody recognizes the extraordinary circumstances, and we've taken steps to prevent it from happening in the future. So I guess some other things that happened at the board adopted a resolution authorizing the issuance of senior lien San Diego County Water Authority Financing Agency Water Revenue Bonds Series 2022A. Another action, the board adopted an ordinance amending the administrative code to revise the threshold for project labor agreement specification on capital improvement program projects, including design build projects. And one more item of note, the board authorized execution of a professional services agreement with AECOM to provide environmental consulting services for the San Vicente Energy Storage Facility project for a 5-year period in the amount not to exceed a little over $4.6 million. And that's all I have. Next, we'll go to Encino Wastewater Authority.
We had our meeting on the 26th. The items, I'm just pulling them up as we're talking here. Let's see. Committee assignments, they brought up the committee assignments for the year. The steering committee was put together, or is about to be put together, for the One Water opportunity at Encina. And we looked at the tactical plan and a review of the capital improvements. Our next meeting is going to be on the 26th of this month, February, and capital committee will be on the 17th, I believe.
Yeah, then my apologies. My internet went down at home, and it took a few minutes for me to reset it and then get back on. I just want to add to the EOA report that there was the two items that we've probably spent the most time on. One was a closed session item pertaining to the hiring of our new general manager, which I can't go into the details of that meeting. But what Director Hernandez did mention, the second item was that he was going to be forming an executive steering committee to really explore and drive the forward movement of this water reuse initiative that the organization has had for some time. And so we don't have a final committee of who's going to be on that. Both Director Hernandez and myself expressed an interest to be on it. Hopefully, at least one of us will get an opportunity to have an active role in that committee, because I think it's going to be important as we move forward. So,
thank you. Yeah, that's great news on proceeding on water reuse. You know, the timing is really good with the federal infrastructure dollars becoming available at some point. So I think things may come together where we may implement something here eventually. So good news. Thank you. Okay, next is standing committees. Any standing committees since our last meeting? Seeing none, I think we had an engineering committee meeting on the 25th. I'll look to Director Hernandez. If you don't have a report, I have the agenda. I could go over that real quick.
Yes, if you would, Director Ellithorpe, I appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah, we met on the engineering committee met on January 25th. Items for discussion were a sewer lining and rehabilitation update. Next was a capital improvement projects 2021 quarterly update. And third was a development project status update. Seeing no other standing committees, next we'll move on to directors' reports on meetings, conferences, and seminars attended. Anybody?
President Ellithorpe, I did attend the Council of Water Utilities, San Diego County chapters recent webinar that they had. They had two subject matter experts that were talking about the proposed state budget funding and some of the opportunities within that state budget funding. The speakers were Daniel Blasett Hayden, who's the Deputy Executive Director for the California Municipal Utilities Association, and Gene Kinney Hurst, who's a partner with Hurst Brooks and Espinoza LLC. The gist of it, the most important thing for us was that the money was for the funding for the ARERGIS program to offset the water bills for folks who had challenges during COVID and weren't able to make their payments as usual. And I think that money's coming in to the different agencies. I believe Glenn already reported that we got our first round of funding on that, which is good news. Of the webinar, that was probably the most pertinent thing to us. But I think in general, what they talked a lot about was that for better or worse, there's a lot of money flowing into the different local agencies from the state and even some federal programs. Don't know where the money's coming from necessarily, but there's a lot of money out there, and so there's a lot of opportunities for agencies to go and get it. And so, they had some opinions about, was the money going to the right priorities? But I think that's debatable, depending on who you speak to. But there's just a lot of funding out there right now.
Yeah, I attended the same meeting, and I would concur with your assessment of the presentation. Okay, any other attendees?
No, just a quick question on that. As Glenn talked about COVID and it's rampant, and how just the financial impact on just all the testing and things like that to the district. I mean, how brutal has that been?
In the early days, it was tough. We spent close to $100,000 testing our employees, but then with the COVID lessened for a while, then we weren't testing as much, and then the testing requirements changed, and then a lot of free testing sites became available. So the cost for testing has really dropped dramatically. With the outbreaks we've had, we have spent more people for testing, but a lot of them are going to kind of free walk-up clinics. They have something over at Cal State San Marcos. If you're a Kaiser member, you can go in and get it for free. So the costs really haven't been that difficult. It's the workload, workforce disruptions that have been challenging for us. I'm just trying to keep crews out in the field and trying to keep people here and keep the lights on has been difficult. But from a financial perspective, it hasn't been that difficult in this fiscal year.
And employees have been needing to use their sick time?
Yeah, so those rules have changed too. Early days, if somebody went home with COVID, it was all work, employer provided time off. And there were some changes in the law depending on if the employees had sick leave balance, and depending on the circumstances, then they could be required to use their own sick leave. So we've been working through that ever-changing evolution of regulations and COVID conditions, and it has been a challenge.
Well, thank you. You've been navigating it very well. Thank you.
I was reflecting, just a personal opinion here. I've been with the district for 5 years. 2 of those have been in COVID. So it's hard to believe 40% of my career here, we've been trying to manage this COVID thing, and it's keep hoping it'll get better. And then some new variant comes out or a regulation changes to, challenge us yet again. So,
well, when it's all over, you'll be an expert.
That's right. That's what I'm shooting for.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to other business. I have no information on meetings, so we'll go to director's comments and future agenda items. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you, President Eltharp. I'd just like to compliment General Manager Pruitt and staff, even with all of the COVID-19 disruptions. I have constituents that text me personally and message me through Facebook when they have water leaks. And I say, I will reach out and see what we can do. I text General Manager Pruitt, and he's always on it right away. So, and then he sends a crew out, and then I get a very, very nice complimentary email or text or Facebook post from that constituent. So thank you. I know that it is difficult. I know that we are short-staffed, but I just want to thank you for always being prompt and on top of whenever a constituent has a concern or an issue.
Yeah, well, you're certainly welcome, and thank you for the kind words. And I encourage all the board members, if either you notice something or somebody notices something, don't hesitate to reach out. Our field crews are awesome. Our customer service folks are awesome. We get right on it. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I wholeheartedly second that. And thanks for the feedback, Director Boyd Hodgson. Okay, any other director comments? Seeing none, I think we're at the point of our agenda of adjournment. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
you, Mike.
Tori.